My future BIL didn't include me in the family tree image for their father's funeral, and I didn't mind. But my boyfriend started a fight with his brother and got a black eye, and now he's being petty and dramatic because he lost and I keep telling him to let it go. I'm honestly embarrassed even typing this because the whole thing feels ridiculous on my end, but somehow I'm smack in the middle of drama that technically isn't mine. It started at a funeral, which already makes everything worse, because who wants to admit their boyfriend threw hands at his own brother in front of grieving family members and a slideshow? For context, I've been with my boyfriend Mike for 4 years. We aren't married, no kids, still figuring out our next steps. His dad passed unexpectedly a few weeks ago, and the whole family was shattered. I went because I cared about the man and because Mike asked me to be there. His family is tight-knit, but not in that sweet, sentimental way. More like competitive, weirdly territorial, and constantly trying to one-up each other, especially Mike and his older brother Phil. Those two have been at it since childhood. I've seen little flashes of it over the years, but I always assumed it was normal sibling rivalry, not whatever this full-blown meltdown turned into. Anyway, at the funeral, there was a slideshow running the whole time. Phil put it together since he's the organized, responsible son, and apparently took charge of pretty much everything. I had zero involvement, which was fine. I wasn't trying to make anything about me, I was just trying to be respectful and support Mike while staying out of the way. Right before things were supposed to start, one of Mike's cousins was fixing some tech stuff with the projector. That's when I walked past Mike and saw him staring at the screen like someone had insulted his entire existence. It was one of the slides, a family tree type thing showing their dad, then branching out to Phil and his wife and kids, and then Mike with a blank space next to him. No partner, no box with my name, nothing. Which, again, didn't bother me at all. Actually, I didn't expect to be included. It was a funeral. I'm not married into the family. I'm not a new widow or anything. It made sense. I even told Mike softly that it wasn't a big deal. I thought we were on the same page. Nope. He was muttering under his breath, breathing hard, pacing back and forth while people around us were literally crying and hugging and trying to comfort each other. I told him to calm down, that it wasn't important, that his dad wouldn't have cared either way. He just kept shaking his head like he was about to explode. Then the ceremony started. Chairs filling, pastor talking, people lighting candles, all of it. It should have been peaceful. Instead, during one of the quiet moments when people were greeting each other and settling in, Mike marched straight up to Phil. I tried to grab his sleeve, but he was locked in. Tunnel vision. He confronted him right there by the entrance where half the family could already see. I couldn't hear every word, but I could read the body language. Mike getting right up in Phil's space, Phil trying to keep it together because their mom was literally 5 feet away wiping her eyes. I saw Phil give this tired shrug like he didn't understand what the big deal was. Mike puffed up, Phil stayed calm, Mike started pointing, Phil shook his head, and then Mike swung. It was a sloppy and impulsive punch, and Phil dodged easily. He hit back once, clean, like he knew exactly what he was doing, and Mike hit the chairs behind him and went down. People gasped. Phil's wife started yelling. It was a disaster. Mike stood up with this stunned look on his face and a bruise already forming under his eye. It was one of those moments where time slows down because everyone around them is processing what just happened. The pastor hadn't even started the main service yet. They just had this sudden brother brawl right in the middle of grief and solemnity. The funeral kept going after the fight, but it was one of those awkward, tense atmospheres where everyone is pretending they didn't just watch two grown brothers knock each other around next to a table full of tissues and laminated prayer cards. Mike kept those sunglasses on like he was a celebrity hiding from paparazzi, but anyone with eyes could see the bruise spreading under them. Every cousin and aunt tried not to stare, but it was impossible because he kept reaching up to touch it like he wanted everyone to know he survived something. Meanwhile, people are grieving, trying to stay composed, and Mike is sitting there like he's the main attraction. Then the slideshow decides to have its own dramatic moment, and freezes for a good minute on the damn family tree slide. The one with Phil's branch complete, and Mike's side looking like a lonely stick floating in space. Everyone started whispering. Phil's cousin tried to fix it, but the projector was stubborn and just held that blank space there like the universe wanted to rub salt in everything. Mike stood up and walked out like the star of a soap opera. Just walked straight out the back doors, hand on his face, making himself the center of attention in a room where his father was literally in a casket. Afterwards, I was cornered by his mom, who was apologizing non-stop and saying she didn't know what to do with her sons anymore. She was trying to hold herself together and blaming herself for them always competing. She kept repeating that Phil has always been the stable one, the organized one, the son who made rational choices, and that Mike hated being compared to him. None of this shocked me because I've watched them jab at each other at every family event, but hearing her actually say that made everything make sense. It was like the funeral just cracked Mike open and all his weird insecurities poured out onto everyone else. Later, in the car, he was acting like I personally stabbed him in the back for not cheering him on when he tried to start another round with his brother. He said I should have stood with him, and I just sat there staring at him because how was I supposed to support that? I told him the plain truth. I wasn't mad about the slideshow, I didn't feel disrespected, and nobody was thinking about me when their father died. He didn't like that answer at all. He acted like I was minimizing the offense and making him look stupid. He kept going on and on about how Phil always tries to belittle him. By the time we pulled into my driveway, he was sulking like a teenager who got grounded. But the real twist came a few hours later, after everyone left the burial site and the dinner thing. Phil pulled me aside quietly. No theatrics, no smugness, nothing like that. He just looked tired and said he wanted me to understand something, so I didn't walk away thinking he was trying to erase me from anything. He said the only reason he didn't add me to the family tree slide was because a couple months back, Mike told him he wasn't sure we were going to last. Apparently Mike made it sound like he was reevaluating everything and didn't want to be tied down, so Phil figured it made more sense to leave the space blank rather than risk including someone Mike might break up with soon. I swear my soul left my body hearing that. Because all this drama, all this yelling, all this performative anger about me being left off a funeral slideshow was never about me. It was about Mike getting caught in his own mess. He told his brother one thing months ago and then tried to flip the script at the funeral like he was some loyal boyfriend defending my honor. Meanwhile, the family tree slide wasn't even an insult. It was literally him dealing with the consequences of what he told his own brother. When I got home that night, everything just clicked in my head. The overreaction, the weird defensiveness, the sunglasses, the dramatics. It wasn't about the photo. It wasn't about respect. It wasn't even about me. It was all about him being embarrassed that his family found out we weren't as stable as he pretended. He created the hole and then blamed everyone else for falling into it. Right now, he's still salty and passive-aggressive about how the day went and how I made him feel unsupported. He's walking around with that black eye like it's a medal he earned in battle. I'm just trying to stay sane and not get sucked into whatever ego spiral he's spinning in. I didn't think this would turn into another round of family tension, but apparently we're just warming up. Update 1. The days after the funeral were quiet in the way that feels fake. I wasn't speaking to Mike much because everything he said sounded like him trying to rewrite the funeral in his favor. He kept sending dramatic texts about how he lost everything in one day and how I stood against him. I ignored most of it because I was still embarrassed for both of us. The only reason I stayed in the loop at all was because his cousins kept messaging me privately. One of them finally just sent me screenshots from the siblings group chat. Apparently, Mike wasn't just sulking. He was going full conspiracy mode. According to him, Phil ambushed him at the funeral, the punch was premeditated, and the entire thing was a setup to humiliate him in front of the extended family. He claimed I helped orchestrate it by staying calm, which he said made him look unstable. The cousins were mostly responding with sarcastic emojis, but a few were egging him on because they're used to his dramatic side and treat it like cheap entertainment. The family started splitting over it. Some cousins mocked him non-stop for getting dropped by his older brother. Others defended him because grief makes people act out. His mom kept calling me, asking if I could talk to him because he listens to you more than anyone. I refused. I wasn't going to be the emotional babysitter for a grown man who threw hands at his own brother in front of a closed casket. Then the other shoe dropped. My best friend texted me with screenshots of messages Mike sent her behind my back. He told her he was worried I was losing interest in him, and that I'd been distant for months. He made it sound like I abandoned him after the funeral because I didn't care about him, not because he punched his brother during the opening prayer of his father's funeral. That was the final straw for me. It wasn't just the fight, and it wasn't even the lying to his family. It was him going behind my back to drag other people into his pity narrative, rewriting our entire relationship to make himself look like a wounded hero. None of it lined up with reality. He was piling lies on top of lies just to avoid admitting he caused the entire mess. At this point, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was exhausted. Everything about the funeral, the slideshow, the black eye, the family chat, the video footage, none of it was about me being excluded from a picture. It was all about him refusing to take responsibility for anything at all. And that's where things were when I realized something had to change, because no relationship survives this level of delusion without someone getting swallowed up by it. I could already feel myself slipping into the role of the calm one who has to constantly manage him, and I wasn't going to live like that. Update 2. So things went from stupid to completely exhausting in a matter of days. I finally broke up with Mike because there was no point trying to reason with someone who twists every situation into some dramatic tragedy starring himself. I told him I was done being dragged into fights he starts, and then pretends were forced on him. He didn't take it well. He kept pacing around my place, talking about how I abandoned him during the hardest time. He kept trying to turn it into this huge betrayal arc. I just let him talk until he finally left. A day later, his mom asked me to come over because everyone needed to clear the air. I didn't want to, but avoiding them felt worse because I hadn't done anything wrong. When I got there, the whole living room felt stiff. Phil, his wife, the cousins, even the aunt who cries at everything were there. It felt like I walked into a meeting no one wanted to be at, but everyone felt forced into because Mike was running his mouth everywhere. They asked if I could explain what actually happened from start to finish, and I did. I laid out everything calmly, the group chat screenshots, the messages he sent to my best friend pretending I'd been neglecting him. All of it. Nobody said a word the whole time. Even the aunt who cries at everything just stared at the floor. Phil eventually spoke up and said there was more to it. Apparently months ago, Mike tried to convince him to add me into some mock-up program thing for a family event they were planning, just to test out how it would look. Phil said he refused because he thought pushing someone into marriage through a program layout was weird. That apparently set off this long-running insecurity spiral that none of us knew about. According to Phil, the funeral slideshow wasn't the first fight about family image. It was just the loudest. The room was quiet again, and it was pretty clear everyone finally saw that the black eye at the funeral wasn't some tragic moment of grief. It was just Mike acting like Mike. They all looked tired, not angry, just tired. And then, in classic Mike fashion, he barged into the house like he was making an entrance on a reality show. He heard we were meeting without him, so he came in ready to perform. He immediately went off about how I sabotaged him, how Phil twisted everything, how the cousins were traitors, how the whole family turned their back on him when he needed support. He looked wild. He acted like everyone hurt him on purpose. At one point, he tried to get in Phil's face again, and Phil's younger cousin just stepped between them and held Mike back like he weighed nothing. Mike kept shouting over everyone, pointing fingers, making big dramatic statements like anyone was buying it. I didn't say a word during any of that. I didn't need to. He was proving the exact point I'd been trying to explain for days. The room kept getting quieter while he kept getting louder, and I think that's when it really hit me that the relationship had been over way before I said it out loud. When he finally ran out of steam, I told them all I was leaving for good. Not in a dramatic way, just matter of fact. I said this whole thing had turned into something I didn't want to be connected to anymore. His mom cried a little, but she didn't argue. Phil's wife just nodded. The cousins avoided eye contact. Everyone looked done. Mike followed me out to the driveway ranting about how I destroyed him and how this was all some grand betrayal. He kept throwing blame in every direction except the one person who caused the entire mess. I didn't stick around to listen. I got in my car and left because there was nothing left to fix. So that was that. The breakup was official. The family meeting blew everything open, and Mike managed to burn every possible bridge in one afternoon. Final update. So a lot has happened since that whole mess blew up, and honestly, I'm just glad I finally reached the part where I'm not waking up every day with a new disaster waiting in my notifications. After the family meeting where Mike lost it in front of everyone, things went downhill fast for him. I didn't stick around for any of it, because by that point, I was done trying to make someone behave like an adult when they clearly didn't want to. A few days after I walked out, I heard from Phil's wife that Mike had basically thrown himself into full meltdown mode. He quit his job out of nowhere because he said he didn't feel respected there. He blocked half his family on and off again, depending on whatever mood he was in that hour. He kept posting long dramatic paragraphs in the family group chat about betrayal and loyalty, then deleting them a few minutes later. Everyone in that house was exhausted. Even his mom, who used to defend him no matter what, finally admitted to Phil's wife that she didn't know how to deal with him anymore. I only reached out once because I wanted my stuff back and didn't want him to pop up at my place unannounced. He asked to meet in person, so I met him at his mom's house during the morning since everyone else was awake and around. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days and had been living off caffeine and leftover funeral casseroles. He immediately started rehashing the same story about how Phil disrespected him first, how I abandoned him, how the whole funeral was some huge setup against him. He said everything with the same certainty someone has when they're telling you the sun rises in the west. I didn't argue. I didn't try to fix anything. I just grabbed my things and told him I hoped he eventually figured out how to stop lighting his own life on fire every time he doesn't get his way. He stared at me like I'd slapped him, but I think it was the first time someone actually said it out loud to him. I wasn't trying to be deep or anything. I just couldn't pretend anymore that this was about grief or slideshows or anything normal. It was all him. After that, I told Phil's wife to just give my number to his mom if anything important came up, but I didn't want contact with Mike anymore. And honestly, that would have been the end of it if Phil didn't message me later with one last piece of information that basically tied everything together. He said he didn't mention it during the family meeting because things were already chaotic, but the night before the funeral, Mike had begged him to redo the slideshow to include me, not because he genuinely cared about me being represented, but because he wanted to look like the committed son in front of extended relatives who hadn't seen him in years. Phil refused because it was the night before the funeral, and he didn't want to rush something that was supposed to honor their dad, and also because months before that, Mike had told him he wasn't sure he wanted to stay in this relationship long term. Phil wasn't trying to make drama, he just didn't want to include someone his brother had hinted he might break up with soon. So basically the whole fight, the black eye, the screaming, the victim act, the driveway meltdown, all of it happened because Mike didn't like being reminded that the world didn't revolve around whatever version of his reality he was selling that day. Once that clicked, everything made perfect sense. He wasn't fighting for me. He wasn't angry because I was left out. He was angry because he couldn't control the narrative. And when he couldn't control the narrative, he attacked anyone nearby until someone reacted. And this time, he just happened to pick a brother who wasn't going to let him chest thump his way through a funeral. It's been a few weeks now. Mike is apparently still not on speaking terms with Phil. His mom keeps the peace by pretending everything is fine unless someone brings it up directly. The family is pretty much split between people who want nothing to do with him for a while and people who are hoping he eventually snaps out of it. I'm not involved in any of it. I blocked him everywhere. I didn't answer when he tried calling from unknown numbers. I told his mom that if he needs closure, he should find it with a therapist, not with me. She actually agreed, which surprised me. But I think even she finally reached her limit. The weirdest part is that I still talk to Phil's wife and one of Mike's cousins because they were always normal with me. They check in sometimes, but no one pushes anything. It's kind of nice to have the parts of the family that weren't constantly on fire. Anyway, that's basically where things landed. The funeral slideshow wasn't disrespectful. Him getting punched wasn't some great tragedy. The whole thing was just a clear window into who Mike really was when no one was smoothing things over for him. I'm honestly relieved the breakup happened when it did, because if this is how he acts under pressure, I cannot imagine dealing with him long term. So that's it. I'm out, he's spiraling, the family is recovering, and I'm finally breathing again. Thanks to everyone who actually read all of this mess. It's been a lot.